Hello, welcome to Food Talk Live with Farmer Street Pantry. So nice that you could join us today. It has been quite a time that we've been in, and since this is our last episode for the season, I thought that it would be interesting to talk about hospitality, because hospitality touches us in so many ways, not only in our homes, our places of worship and work, but it's also a huge industry. It's employs millions of people, and we've been seeing the impact that the pandemic has had on that industry recently. So I thought that it would be a really good topic for this week. And because it's hospitality, of course, I didn't have to search too far for an expert in hospitality. And so this week, I wanted to invite my daughter, Remy Pascale, who is a restaurant manager located in Brooklyn. And she's also a community volunteer with Green Market in New York City. And so I thought she would have some really good insights. Remy has worked most recently with Bedford Street Hospitality in New York City, which runs Chumleys, Sushi Nakagawa. She also was with the Finch and Bethany, Estella, and also a member of the Dinex group at Cafe Boulud and also Boulud Sud. So she has an extensive amount of hospitality experience. And so I'm so pleased to welcome Remy to our show today. Hey, Rem.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for the intro, Mom. Nothing like having your mother really spruce up your ego.
Well, just a parent lives for moments like this, right? So anyway, well, thank you for joining today. And you've been, it's been quite an amazing thing that we've been seeing, as we're sheltering in place. But people are very aware of what's happening in New York City, and in terms of the restaurant business, and also all manner of hospitality industry businesses, and then also in terms of what's happening with social protest and how that might be impacting that business. So do you want to talk just a little bit first about the last place where you were employed, where it was located, and that kind of thing, just to kind of give us a little bit of a picture of the kinds of things that you were doing and how you were operating within the hospitality industry?
Sure. So I was most recently at Bedford Street Hospitality, as you mentioned, and in that role, I got to see a lot, which was very cool, in different spaces with kind of different clienteles, depending on what you're looking at. Chumleys, for people who have been there or have seen photos, has so much history to it, and has this wonderful following that has existed for a long, long time. And Sushi Nakagawa, on the other hand, is this other side of dining in New York that evokes a very high level of attention to detail, often called fine dining. What I love so much about both spaces is that they still functioned as neighborhood restaurants in a very big way. And we still had a lot of people who were coming to those spaces because they lived in the neighborhood. Both, by the way, are located in the West Village in Manhattan, and they both have, again, as I mentioned, their own clientele, but were kind of great ways to sort of stretch your culinary chops, if you will, and on a day-to-day basis deal with different problems that may arise in either restaurant. And I guess for me, my career has always sort of been in operations. That's really how I functioned. I think there's lots of people who in restaurants who work in what's called the front of house will tend to skew along the lines of working as a sommelier, working in beverage, or working as a bartender, head bartender. But for me, what I really loved is making sure that those places operated properly. And there's a lot of things that fall under an umbrella like that. So it's a lot of fun, but it's also just a lot of fun to be in spaces like those that are a little smaller, a little more intimate.
So within that context for you, what kind of hospitality, what does hospitality mean for a director of operations or a restaurant manager? What's in your mind when you're thinking about the guest experience as far as hospitality?
It starts before you're even thinking about it as a guest, I believe. The experience starts when you go online and look at a website, for the most part. It can also be social media. It can also be the press that's out there. A lot of those are, they're the sort of spark that get you to want to find out more, that get you to want to be a little bit more associated with a brand that you're maybe not so familiar with. Because, let's be honest, if we're starting out from the point of zero we don't know anything about you, that buildup is really important. And when you call a restaurant, the person that answers the phone, which people don't do so much these days, I wish they did a little bit more, but it's really important to have a person on that other line who is, number one, well-informed, number two, is putting off an energy or a vibe that evokes a level of hospitality. So for me, so much of that is initial, and then all of the other stuff has to fall in line behind that in an appropriate order. When you walk in, you can't be greeted by somebody 10 minutes after you walk in. You have to be greeted by somebody right away when you walk in. So there's a lot of components that build on that hospitality, and they go until after you've left. Sometimes it's leaving a review on a reservation site, or it's getting a thank you note from a manager or from a chef for coming in and celebrating your birthday or whatever it is. So I think, in my eyes, I think hospitality is, it goes beyond you're in our space, let's talk to you and have a conversation. It's much bigger than that.
So starts even before. Yeah. Yep. And you can kind of extrapolate that to our home lives too, and being hospitable in our work lives too. It's setting up a delightful expectation of an interaction and being together and being social. That's cool. So in New York City, what have you been seeing as far as the economic impact and the closing of so many? You must know many, many different restaurants that have closed or that have tried to change their business models as a result of COVID-19 pandemic.
I have, and it is heartbreaking and inspiring all at the same time. There are places where, for example, I don't think this is news anywhere. I'm pretty sure they announced it, but the Finch has decided to close after 5 or 6 years. And the Finch is a small standalone neighborhood restaurant.
Which is where you were manager.
Right.
A few years ago, Brooklyn based.
For a few years. And it's, I think it's heartbreaking for a lot of people, especially when those are small businesses and neighborhood restaurants, and you know the owner and you know all of the staff. And I have seen people who have had the means to be able to kind of flip their business around, I'll use this example, and for anyone who's watching or has been around me in New York, I talk about this restaurant a lot, but they're across the street from me. They're a restaurant called Oxalis, and they did this very cool shift when COVID really started to shut everything down, and New York City was sort of peaking in terms of COVID cases. The owners are really wonderful, smart, innovative guys, and they had decided to shift their business completely online. They came up with literally a new business. They formatted everything so that it's available to shop online, and you get a box, and you can put whatever you want, wine, produce, and get things and the items and also a bunch of grocery stores. And you think about being a restaurant person, you're always sort of set with this expectation of it. I think I overused that word there, but it is a mentality that you have to go into because you just don't know what any day will bring. And I really felt like those guys another restaurant in my neighborhood in Brooklyn also eating food system. The restaurant workers who were out of work and food's expensive. It's not
Rem, excuse me. I'm having a hard time with hearing your audio.
Hearing my audio?
Yeah, there it is. Now it's back. Yeah, I think that's better. How's the volume on your audio?
I'm up very high. I can hear you perfectly.
You can hear me okay? Okay. Sorry. Just a little glitch. I don't know if it's my connection or what's going on. The joys of going live, right? So how you talked about your friends at your neighborhood restaurant in Brooklyn and what they're doing to change. How are there any other things that you've been seeing in New York City as far as how people are coping, how businesses are coping? What's your projection for the next year? What do you think will happen?
I think we are at a moment right now where taking a look at the small businesses around us and really being able to look at where our money goes is so important. We're getting a lot of information right now that I think is important to process and take time to process. And I also think that actions really be louder than words. And in the country that we live in, where we want to put the money forward, speaks volumes for where the heart lies. For me, I have a lot of friends who have reopened to family countries and live in restaurants.
Okay, Rem, I'm going to interrupt again because you were a swimmer, and it's kind of like it's a little like you're talking underwater. I'm sorry. There you go. I don't know what's going on.
I might grab headphones. Just put a hand up if I'm.
Yeah. Well, it started already. It started again. So, yeah.
Let me try to grab headphones very quickly, and that might help.
Yep. Yeah, well, this is what happens when sometimes you're in a building and the connection's not great. So yeah, maybe
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, that's great. Perfect.
Okay. That's better for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll stick. So.
Okay. Uh, anyways, I'm so sorry. We were.
Yeah, no, we were. So what going into the future? What else have you seen in New York, and how's the hospitality business going to um, adjust and move forward? What's going to happen with fine dining? Is it going to be is anybody going to sit their rear end in a restaurant seat again and have a tablecloth in front of them?
Very good question. I think we are looking at a future that is very difficult to predict. And I think we're also looking at a future where it takes a lot of effort on everyone's part to make things a healthy environment. I think we have so many opportunities now to all really assess what is the world that we want to be living in. Mm-hmm. For me, in hospitality, I think that there's a couple of ways we could go. I think everyone has heard a lot about PPP loans and things like that. And small businesses sort of have been shortchanged in some ways, whereas big, massive corporate companies kind of continue to be built up and built up. And again, I think I mentioned this earlier, being conscious of where your money is going is important. But beyond that, it's also really staying in a light of understanding of, in New York City, for example, we have an abundance of food. You mentioned the farmers market. We have a variety of different farmers markets. Actually, it's not just Green Market. There's a few different farmers markets within New York City. They're in all 5 boroughs. There are places in the country where there are food deserts. So I think it's important to remember, if we're going to be talking about the future moving forward, we should shift a little bit more to talking about everybody in the country and how these systems affect everybody. We as New Yorkers can do our part and support the farms that are local and around us. And I think that's really important. I know a lot of chefs that have done that for years, that go to the Green Market almost every day that it's open, to make sure that they're finding the best produce and bringing the best thing to their customers. But mm-hmm. I think we as people can do that as well. And then on top of that, I mean, we don't have a foolproof plan other than, frankly, a vaccine. So I think once we get to that point, we're going to need to adjust and continue to do these things like we've seen people in restaurants doing, adjusting and becoming a grocery store or a soup kitchen or whatever it is. We're going to need to continue to do those things along the line. It's not easy. And that's the thing that we all have to kind of become okay with, is that it's not going to be easy, and it's going to take collaboration in order to get to the place where we can return to fine dining and spaces that are meant to bring you outside of your body. I think,
right.
In order to get to that point, we have to be hyper present right now.
Right. So you had you mentioned the markets. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement as a volunteer serving with Green Market?
Yes. I started a couple of years ago, just going as a guest, and I found that I was.
And why were you going?
I had actually been invited by the co-chair of the committee. So to bring everybody up to speed, there is a organization in New York called Grow NYC. Grow NYC has a very big umbrella. Their 4 pillars are food access and agriculture. They have a conservation pillar, a education pillar, and I'm missing one. There's one more.
We can go to the website. We can go to, yeah.
We can go to the website. But and green space. I'm sorry. They also are very big on making sure that New York City stays green because if you actually move around New York City a lot, I highly recommend doing it on a bike, but you will see a lot of different patches of green space and gardens and things like that. So under that big umbrella is Green Market. And Green Market is the organization that facilitates all of the farmers markets in New York City. And, shout out to California. It's a very abundant state. And I think there are a lot of various states that have a lot of farms directly around big cities. And that's so great and so wonderful. Syracuse, I know, has a regional farmers market. The markets here, the markets here in New York are in all 5 boroughs, and some of them are very, very big. Union Square is probably the most widely known, but there's also a very big market here in Brooklyn on Saturdays at Grand Army Plaza. And the organization that I'm part of is not actually the Green Market. It is the advisory committee to the Green Market. So it's comprised of farmers, community members, and Green Market staff. So everyone comes together and there's a collective that helps to make sure that Green Market is moving forward appropriately. There's council that helps oversee any of the laws that affect farmers, because farmers are heavily regulated, if you don't already know that. And the Green Market itself falling within the city guidelines and making sure that things are being done appropriately and safely. There's been a lot of change that sort of happened with them in the last couple of months, for sure. But it being an open air market, it has really, I feel like, at least for me, I feel like it sort of helps deal with the need for people to stock up and to be prepared. And it also gives them a space where you are ultimately a little bit safer, because you're not walking around a grocery store and touching things that other people have touched. At the Green Market, they have regulated everything so that you only take and touch the belongings that you are going to leave with.
Right.
And they have also roped off every part of the market so that they can control traffic into the markets. Mm-hmm. Everything, all the lines are built to be socially distanced, just like you would see in the grocery store. And everyone is masked. And you're in an outdoor environment. So for me, in my eyes, it's probably was the safer way to shop for food during the pandemic, on top of it being great, wonderful local produce. So
right. Well, we've started selling Farmer Street Pantry products at the regional market, and I've been really impressed with the amount of cooperation that you see. I would say 99% of the people have masks, are wearing masks. Mm-hmm. A lot of vendors have masks and gloves. Mm-hmm. People are conscious of waiting their turn, not crowding, not elbowing in. We're not doing samples, but it's a wonderful social environment, and I think everybody is disciplined and conscientious, and it's really a great place to be. By the way, if anybody on this broadcast, if you have some questions for Remy, please send them. I can see some people have been commenting, so I know some folks are out there. So if you have any questions for Remy related to hospitality, New York City, the farmers markets, please go ahead and send them our way, and we'll put them on the agenda. So Rem, you've been out. You mentioned your bike, and I know you've kind of been. I just can't imagine over the last few months the difference in terms of who you're seeing out and so forth. But out and about, there's been so many amazing moments. We're in a time of social change that's very profound. And again, the hospitality industry is kind of front and center with a lot of the issues that are coming up with Black Lives Matter, with the right to work, the LGBTQ decision from the Supreme Court. So this kind of the role of women in business and their right to for recognition and promotion. So all of these things, I think, have come to intersect with the hospitality industry. So I know that you've been very engaged in all of that. You've attended a lot of the protests, and what, vis-a-vis the hospitality industry, what are some insights that you have? How has this impacted you?
It's so wonderful to see this conversation happening, and I know I'm saying that, and there's a lot of different feelings on this whole thing, but I love a good dredging up. I love a good call out the elephant in the room. That is to say, I don't think we know yet what the impact of all of these movements will be yet on the industry. I feel like there is an obligation on the part of very many of us who have experienced privilege in our lives. And I would speak to my own. I am the daughter of a former pastry chef and a restaurateur who were able to be successful. And, that's given me a lot of clout in my life to be able to progress in my career the way I have. But I think part of that is acknowledging, and part of that is acting. And it is in those positions of people who have power and are able to use it. I really think it is the time to make sure that we are hearing those, Black Americans, other Americans of color, a lot of the immigrants that support the hospitality industry. I think there's a lot of sides of this debate, but the fact of the matter is that restaurants are very much supported by immigrants in this country. And there's no way to deny that. And I think it is so important that the people who have power take the time to listen to those and listen to their needs and make sure that we are moving forward in a way where their voices can continue to be heard. And they have the ability, upward mobility, to do what they would like. Number one, that starts with making sure that your workspace is reflective of the population around you. In New York City, we have a population that looks different from the rest of the country. But I would think that in New York, we could take this even further and make it really inclusive and really diverse. I'm so excited for some of the things that are coming up, but I'm also, for example, the Supreme Court recently ruled on a few things, particularly protecting LGBTQ plus in the workplace. It's funny because it is a very basic right. You should not be discriminated against in your workplace. But then that calls on those of us who run restaurants and operate restaurant groups to make sure that our language is inclusive and non-gendered, and we are building places where if somebody uses pronouns they, them, they feel comfortable using those pronouns, and the training materials that they have use those pronouns. And so I think we really have a chance right now to push forward on these ideas and make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable. Again, as I mentioned, some of us have had more opportunity, but it now just falls on us to act on that.
Right. So as a manager, as a director of operations, you feel going forward, that there will be just a greater awareness of making sure that things are equitable in terms of who's getting promoted, and the ideas that are getting promoted that will help guarantee the future, because innovation in the hospitality business is key. It's ongoing and it's never ending, right?
This is a very weird analogy, but I think so often on Tina Fey's book, she references comedy.
Which book is that? Bossy Pants?
Bossy Pants, yeah.
Bossy Pants, yeah.
And she references how when she was in a room with only two women, she made I think it was like a tampon joke or something like that. And she's like, there was no laugh. And then once we had changed the makeup of the room to include more women, the joke hit, and it made it into the sketch or whatever. Right. And I think that's a very soft way of saying diverse voices have a really wonderful way of bringing new ideas into a group.
Right.
And you're missing out.
Right. And for fine dining, it's going to be, which comes from a European-based tradition, how, this hopefully will continue to evolve that part of the business and make it more accessible for, in terms of a place to work, and also an experience, a hospitality experience for everybody. So.
Hi guys, Remy Pascale here. Just a quick tip on social distancing and dining. If you're not comfortable going out to eat, I recommend that you start something that actually was started in Toronto. It's called a social group. It consists of about 10 people who agree to keep themselves healthy, number one. Number two, not allow anyone else to, I guess you could say, enter into the social group. But it allows you to socialize without masks, without social distancing. And I think that is the perfect formula for a dinner party group. So if you're not comfortable going to restaurants, if you still want to be social and see your friends, if you can do it outside, all the better. But hosting your friends at your home, bringing back the dinner party, I hope it comes back with a vengeance, and keeping yourself safe, most importantly. Thanks.
Well, Remy, thank you so much. Our time is up, unfortunately. But thanks so much for your insights and talking about this really interesting topic. And I hope you have a great 4th of July weekend. And any last comments?
You too. And enjoy the weather up there. And we all have enjoyed this series so much. So thank you for doing it.
Oh, sure. Well, my pleasure. So we'll be back again at some point. But we'll say goodbye to Remy right now. Thanks, honey.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for coming and joining us. This is Lynn from Farmer Street Pantry, and you've been watching Food Talk Live. It's the end of our first season, but stay tuned. Later in the summer or early fall, we'll pick up with another season. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day, and be well, and see you soon.